wow. You guys have done a bunch of stuff while I've been gone. Holy cow. Yeah, wow. I really appreciate it. This is a very good, Christmas for me here. This is actually December 24th, 2022. So happy Christmas Eve day. I hope that you and your loved ones are safe and gonna have some good times today. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep moving forward here with some of what's been happening with the speaker project. When I walked out of the room yesterday, you probably saw that I was heading out to cut some lumber. So I cut a bunch of lumber, and man, I'll tell you what, it really, it took a toll on me for sure. A lot of cutting with a cheap miter saw. So essentially what I've got today is all I've got, and I'm not going to cut up any more lumber. I'm just going to try to work with what I have. Okay. So that being said, we're going to move ahead with a little bit of this. Keep the Christmas music going in the background, a little fireplace, keep us warm. Yeah, so I think you'll notice a big difference in that we've got some clamps on this speaker. And this one I've actually already started by putting the mid-range chamber inside, the brace from front to rear, and the brace from side to side. That all may sound really simple, but man, it took a bit. It took a while to do. The other thing that I did along the way is these holes here, the tweeter hole and the mid-range hole. I really did need to notch those out a little bit. So yeah, with your speakers, sometimes if you're lucky, so like this is the tweeter that's going to go in here, and this was a Parts Express GRS, and it's a phenolic ring tweeter. I guess this is a revamped version of the old Marantz phenolic dome tweeter. Anyway, I'm hoping this gives me a really nice smooth sound, but you'll see where the terminals are here. So last night when I went to fit this in the hole, didn't work out real good. I would have had to bend these tabs and that, which is no good. Sit kind of funky in the hole. So what I did is I used this cardboard that it came with, okay, as my template. I'll kind of show you how that worked out. All right, let's get some of these clamps out of the way here. Notice I've tried to make an effort here cleaning up in that, so yeah, it was driving me nuts. I can't work in a messy area, not for very long anyway. And these little scraps of lumber that you see, I'm probably going to wind up using them all. I'm trying to keep them separated by which speaker cabinet it's going to. So, moving right along here. So I notched this out, and I notched this one out. So what's going to happen is this guy's going to go in here like so, okay? And with the full range driver, had a little bit of a issue with that one as well, because as you may have seen in one of these other videos, and this is part 6B. So part 6B. Anyway, this is a Dayton 5-inch full range PA driver, and its design, I don't know, it's a decent speaker. It's model PA 138. It's an 8 ohm speaker, and this is designed to have like a small stage monitor or something like that. Should have a decent frequency response, especially in the mid-range section, and I have tried this in a center channel and did like the way it sounded. So I think it's gonna sound really nice crossed over. At any rate, got these terminal ends sticking off here, right? I did have to notch this open, and you can see that I've got my chamber centered in here. This is kind of a virgin trial fit with everything the way you see it. Chamfered edges, notched hole, and the mid-range chamber. All right, so that goes in like that, and these screw holes actually line up perfect. These ones do not. They're a little bit off, so I will have to be making some new holes for that. And I figured I'd just kind of do a recap on this here. So what's going in here as a driver is this is a 25-year-old Dayton loudspeaker company Series 2. This is what they called their classic Series 2 woofer. And this is a monster woofer that I really like. Used it in some designs back in the day. It's part number 295130. All right, so and this guy here, drastically different than the other woofers. So this is what's going inside of here. It's like a 20-pound speaker. Bended pole piece, giant magnet, 2.5-inch coil. This is 300 watt RMS, like 600 watt max. This woofer will work out real nicely in here. And it does line up just perfect. So eventually, these things are already so much more heavy than they were. This is what it's going to kind of look like when I'm done, or close to being done. It's also going to have, I see me crawling around like a baby here, right? I'm going to start with the tuning port that came with the Jensen. See how that sounds. This is a small tuning port, okay? Might make noise with this woofer. But this one reaches a little bit lower than the other one, and its TS parameters call for a little bit different box dimensions and port dimensions. So I did get a different port to try in there in case this one is too short. And then coming from China, believe it or not, there's a couple of 3-inch ID ports that I have coming. So they're like 3-inch by, I want to say 6-inch. So in case one of these doesn't work, I'm going to have to end up opening up this hole. So don't really want to if I can help it, but it's a possibility. All right, so yeah, this is coming along pretty nicely. I think this is going to make a pretty decent set of speakers, for sure. You want to see what this thing looks like when I button it up a little bit? All right. Okay, what'd you do with my screwdriver? Here it is. All right. Now you remember in a previous video I said, yeah, you'll probably never catch me working on a speaker like this unless I had to. Well, in this case I have to because it's so friggin' heavy. And yeah, that'll working on them standing upright, not gonna work out so good. And plus, I want to make sure that these guys are just finger tight. I don't want any kind of weird pressure on the screws. That means they're going in crooked, or you're not hitting the hole. So now the only one I'm going to have a little trouble with right now is this guy, because you can't even see the holes. So maybe I'll just hold that for demonstration purposes. And I'll just throw a couple screws in here, just so you get the gist of it. Just tighten up a couple of these. All right, so I'm gonna stand this guy up, and keep in mind that not all the pieces are in on the inside, as far as the battens, gussets, insulation, crossover. None of that's inside yet. But basically, here's what I'm going to wind up with when everything's said and done. It's going to look like so. Yeah, super tight driver, super tight mid-range. And I don't know if I'm going to just leave these with the foam gaskets here showing, or if I'm going to try to. So I do have these rings that fit right over here. They're just decorative, came off a different speaker, but the only downside to it is that I will have to trim out some of this foam gasket if I'm going to use that, but it would give it a more polished look. That's a possibility. And then with the woofer, so on the Jensen woofers, they have this plastic surround trim ring that's glued on. I kind of hate to ruin these drivers, they're like brand new, but I was tempted to try to heat this up and get the glue to separate off the gasket and off of this trim ring so I can use that. I'm not real sure though. Man, I'll tell you what. I don't know how thick that is. If this is one thick piece, chances are this doesn't have one of these cork gaskets. These gaskets, by the way, these go back to when I first started working on speakers 40 plus years ago. So back then, speakers used to be mounted on the back of the baffle. And today, for whatever reason, they still make them with these gaskets. So you can put them behind the baffle. Not many people do. I actually had a design that I had made. Oh, it was essentially it was a high power quasi PA speaker, and it was made out of like 13 layer Baltic birch, 5/8 inch I believe it was, and I had a selenium, I think it was called a selenium 15 inch PA woofer in it, and I also had a high power dome horn loaded mid-range in it, tweeter, and then the mid-range similar to this one, tucked away in a horn. So basically that was a nice speaker, but anyway, it just kind of, that one was mounted on the backside. That's where I was going with that. Apologize for getting all sidetracked. So that one was mounted on the backside, but I had took and routed the edges so that they were round and kind of flared. So it looked really good and it wasn't causing any kind of interference. Whereas if you mount, say, this woofer behind here, if this back came off or something, like the old speakers, the backs used to come off, it's got this square edge here, which you know, it's not the greatest for diffraction. It's not going to kill it, but it's not going to look that great unless you do something with the edge to make it look pretty. So anyway, most of the time we mount them like this. Little gasket or caulk behind here. This speaker has a gasket, this one doesn't behind it. So I'll have to try to figure out what I'm doing with that. So I'm gonna just kind of pause the video for right now and come back in a minute when I'm ready to go ahead and show you kind of more of the fabrication aspect of what I'm doing here. So thanks a lot and hang in there. I'll be right back. Promise. All right, told you I'd be back this time. Didn't leave you hanging like yesterday. All right, so I've got the mock-up all undone again. I got the drivers out, and I'm going to show you what I had in mind here for bracing. And with that being said, when I was working on this last night, I really had a revelation, which is these cabinets are actually a lot cheesier than I thought they were. Yeah, the front of it, I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure how they're holding this baffle in there. There's a tiny little ridge on the inside, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure if that's something that's routed into, if it's routed into the side. Yeah, I think it must be routed into the side. I don't know. But anyway, it's funky. It's not real solid. This thing is just all glued together from the factory, and the glue's 30 years old or whatever. So strength of the cabinet is kind of first and foremost on my mind. This bracing in here, I mean, really changed the resonance quite a bit, but it needs more for sure. So what's going to happen, and the thoughts going forward here are, first I told you I had kind of an allocated amount of wood because I really don't want to cut any more than I already have because it was a pain in the ass. But I've got a couple of gussets for each cabinet, a couple of these decent sized gussets. I've got 5 of these little gussets that was just left over from cutting these. You can kind of see how that all played out. So when I was cutting these, I wound up with some of these. All right. There's some other stuff I was cutting at the same time. I've got, yes, quantity 2 of these wood blocks. Again, just chop off pieces. Pretty similar in size, close enough for this rocket science project I've got going on here. This one here, this was actually part of a mistake. I can't tell you this story. So I was trying to cut more of these, and what I wound up with was cutting it. Oh, how did I do it? Okay, so here's what I wound up with, is I had a piece, you can imagine like this. And hell, I got all turned around on the miter saw for some reason. I thought I'd be fancy. It's so hard with the miter box saw. Once you get partway into this material, it's poplar, and it's a little harder than I thought to work with the miter box saw especially. But yeah, so I was trying to cut up another one of these, flipped it the wrong way, and what I wound up with was a piece that looked like this. Oh boy, so then the wheels were spinning. Okay, what am I gonna do with a piece like this? I could, put it in there like so, or whatever the case is. I was like, you know what, heck with it. I'll just make a couple extra gussets with it. And unfortunately, I wanted 4 of these for each speaker, but I got tired of cutting. Ugh. All right. We've also got couple of these wings. I just took this 36-inch piece of 1/4-inch poplar that I had, and I cut it into 4 equal-sized pieces. They're not ultra square though. I'm telling you, man, the miter box was too small for these, so I wound up getting off angle. So being a nut for symmetry, this might drive me a little bit bonkers even when they're inside the cabinet and you can't see them, but it is what it is. I'll use them anyway. And yeah, the rest of this here is for this cabinet. So got the chamber that's going to go up inside of here. And then we've got cross brace that way, cross brace this way. Alright. And you know what? Light can be your friend. My kid gave me this headband light and it works phenomenal. Look like a dork, but boy, oh boy, I tell you, when I was messing around with this stuff in the dark, no, darker, didn't have daylight coming in last night, so this came in really handy, especially getting my head down in there and being able to see what I was doing inside the cabinet with the glue, and threw a couple nails in there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about design philosophy with the fabrication of gussets. Boy, oh boy. I'm still at a crossroads with this. I wrestled with this as I was trying to get to sleep last night. And if you've got any comments, throw them down below. By the time your comments are there, chances are I'll probably have my stuff glued in there, but at least your opinions will count, because you may have some better ideas of what to do at this stage. Matter of fact, you may have even done something different in here. I'm not sure, but for me, this seemed to work out okay. And where I placed this brace is off center. It's not right in the middle of this side panel. And my original thought was to do something like this. Okay, which would transfer some more of the cabinet's strength or lack thereof. It'll help strengthen it by transferring some of the load. So the load from the baffle, the load from the top, the load from the back, all transfers down into here. So by adding these gussets, I can increase the rigidity of that back panel a little bit. I told you I had wrestled with where to put the crossover, so I thought about putting the crossover right on here. Except I don't know if I like that too much. So I'm kind of at a crossroads with that idea. The other idea was to do something like this, and something I've wanted to try for a long time is doing kind of a V shape. And it would go something like this, which is supposed to help break up standing waves. So that's one idea I had. The other idea that I had was, as I mentioned before, I realized, and hopefully you'll be able to get a good look inside of here. Well, let's try to get this guy up here. So inside of here, I'm not sure how well you can see that. All right. The top, a little worried about the top. I mean, it is definitely better than it was. Hear the difference? So it did make a difference there. On the back, made a difference. Sides. Definitely. And then front. So you can already tell what a difference this little bit of bracing has made. So I think what I may wind up doing in the top section, up inside here, and actually let me grab this other one and show it to you up close. Hopefully that trick of sticking it over the phone actually worked. And these are getting, well, these are pretty light, but that other cabinet's already starting to get heavier. Yeah, so the inside of this guy, if you could see down inside of there, it doesn't have really good strength up at the top. So in the top, what I'm probably going to do is maybe throw a couple of these guys up in here, possibly up inside in the corners like this. This piece is already pretty rigid here. By adding these in there, I'll tighten it up even more, and it'll transfer that same strength into this area that's still resonating. The other idea I had was to take my two lonely gussets and place them. I'm going to try to angle this so you can see it. Just put them in here to try to kind of shore up the bottom of the baffle, especially knowing that it's not in here super great, so that could add a little bit more strength to it. And honestly, come to think of it, as much as I kind of really was digging the idea of the wings, changing the shape of the inside, I think that on this particular cabinet, I am leaning toward strength more than anything else. Yeah, maybe something like that. I already mentioned a couple of these up in the top corners. All right, maybe these guys would go here, or maybe here. Yeah, that would probably be better up in here. What do you think, guys? Yeah, I think that's the trick. Probably go up in here. Like so. I think that'd probably do it. And then on the back, see how plans evolve as you go. Now this may be entirely different by the time I show it to you when it's all said and done, but this is how these projects sometimes go. You gotta kind of go with the flow. What works, what you got at hand. Big old crossover is going to be a little bit of a challenge. And this is a, we're going to show you this too, once again. It's a Dayton speaker crossover, 3-way, 8 ohm, 800/4500 hertz, 200 watt. I have used the Eminence versions of these in the past, and I'm not sure who makes this for Dayton or if Dayton actually makes it. Iron core inductors versus air core. Probably less critical on the base end as opposed to the high end, which has got these poly caps. So that I was more interested in. These capacitors are expensive. These aren't cheap either. If I were to ever switch these out, they would be they'd be really expensive to replace these inductors. And for this project, I'm not sure if it would actually be worth it or not. In case you're wondering what this is for, this essentially is like a dome light in a car, and it will take it protects the high frequency band, which is really cool. Matter of fact, some of the older speakers that I ran, the Eminence versions that had these in them, when I was playing them, and like I said, I used to run them at say 2500 watts RMS. These things would be glowing. You could see them through the ports, almost like a disco show inside. So they do handle some energy. And if they ever burn out, chances are that'll fry before your tweeter, hopefully, and you can replace it. But yeah, so this has got to go somewhere, right? And it's heavy. And what I'm envisioning for this is maybe right behind the woofer, something like so. And what this will do is it'll add a little something to the back panel too. So even just having that extra material and the extra weight, the glue and the screws sitting on this back panel, it will change the way that it sounds, give it a more rigid sound. So that's what I'm thinking with that. Hopefully you can see that. If not, I'll pick it up a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning for this, or possibly down a little bit lower, something like that. Haven't quite decided on that though. And then it'll be all about the wiring. All right, that being set aside for now, knowing that I'm in the progress of figuring out what the heck I'm doing with this here. A little chunky blocks. If you guys think of anything to do with those, put them in the comments. Don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. If I only use one of these, tell me what to do with the second one. Or maybe I'll sandwich two of them together, give it some more rigidity. The other thing I thought about is actually cutting these at an angle. Because it's not super hard to cut, it's a lot thinner. So I might even make a couple gussets out of that. So look forward to that in the next video, part 7. Moving right along here. All right. And I'm going to also talk to you about wiring up crossovers, how to connect the wires, because it can be a little bit confusing if you've never done it before. Or even if you have done it before and you're dealing with a crossover that you've never seen or worked with. I'll do that when I'm actually getting more to the final stages of reassembly with the wiring. All right, working up sweat here. I think Mama's got the heat turned up because it is frigid outside in Chicagoland today. The winter storm should be dissipating right about now, and just we're getting ready to have some cold weather set in. before I wrap up this video, because I've got to actually get going to Christmas Eve party. It's at my son and daughter-in-law's. I get to see my 5 grandkids. Me and Grandma, we get to see them open up all their cool gifts and everything. Got my son something nice, got my daughter-in-law something nice. So we're excited to see them open up their gifts and see the look on their faces. This is actually my Christmas present early, because I told my wife, hey, I want speakers for Christmas, speaker cabinets. So I spent $80 on myself buying my own Christmas gift. Pathetic, I know. Hey, what can I say? All right, so I wanted to show you, before I recap on this video, I'm going to show you how I actually chamfered and notched the mid-range hole. And then I'm going to show you how I put this little notch into the tweeter hole. And that's going to be it for this video, because I'm just going to, when I'm done showing you this, I'm going to basically cut it off and cut off the video and get going on trying to brace up this cabinet, because this glue takes 24 hours to set, give or take. I had it clamped up for probably a good 12 hours, so it's snug right now, not completely cured though. So I want it completely cured before I actually start running these. So yeah, I'll start by doing the chamber, brace in this cabinet. And while that one is being clamped up and glued, the glue setting, I'm going to go ahead and start gusseting the inside of this one and getting that pad for the crossover worked out. So that's coming up. But for now, we'll move this guy out of the way. All right. So, what do we do? And I hope that you can see this okay. Pretty sure you can. We gotta count on it. So I got real lucky, like I mentioned, the tweeter that I'm putting in here eventually is going to be very similar in size to the one that came out of it. The only exception is that it's got a notch that it needs. So I'm just going to use this as a stencil, try to even it up on the hole. And then I'm going to color this in with a magic marker. Be careful of that carpeting. Let me show you what this looks like. So what I've got, so you can see it right here. So I've got this little kind of ink patch where I'm going to be cutting out. And you see from the ring of the old speaker, I'm not breaking outside that ring. This one, when I do it, I've got to be more careful, because this, the basket, the edge is not as big, doesn't have as big of a flange on it. And since I don't have this box, not all speakers have that. This box with these dates, if I remember right, and I looked at the other box I had downstairs, I don't think there's anything in it other than just a piece of cardboard. So there's no template in there. But you can see where the problem is, right at the bottom. And I say the bottom because being a junkie for symmetry, where these coil wires are soldered in here, I want those at the bottom, which is where the terminals are. And then also, if you remember, this chamber that it's going to go into is fairly narrow. Very narrow. So it only fits in there. Just barely. Okay? So I need enough room for that. Now, the good news is, see with that front baffle, it picks it up a little bit, but I still need room for the terminal ends. And maybe you could hear in that too. I just noticed it myself, the magnet scraping on that a little bit. That was completely unintentional. Once I got that all glued together, that's just kind of how it turned out. Whereas before, when I was mocking it up and it was loose, there was space around it. So since that magnet's actually touching that wood, I may wind up putting a piece of electrical tape around the outside of this magnet, just one small strip, just in case, just as a kind of vibration dampener. Alright, so let's get back to eyeballing this guy. So, fit fine here. What are we doing here, right? Well, we know we need this guy down in here. And I'm eyeballing this cardboard cutout to these screw holes. Keep it kind of perpendicular. So that's pretty much what I'm gonna do. Something like this looks pretty even. Alright, close enough. Alright, so I've colored my little notch on that one. If you can see it. And best way I found to cut these, and this is going to make some racket, is with, well, after years of messing around with all kind of different jab saws and whatnot, and, rotary cutters and stuff, I wound up finding a Japanese steel blade knife. It's like a multi-purpose knife saw. This thing is sharp and it's pretty sturdy. I think I found it on Amazon. You can cut drywall with it. You can cut the flake board, MDF, hardwood, whatever you, I mean, I think even metal. So got a really aggressive tooth design. So that works for that. And for the hole that we need, or for the chamfer, I mean, I'm going to be using what we call a half round file. Technically it's not half a round, but that's what we call them. It's fairly coarse, but not super coarse, because I don't want to tear up that fiberboard too bad. And what I want to do is just make enough of an edge for that mid-range to sit in there nice and tight. So I know in the last video you saw me come in after the fact when I thought the camera was turned off and I was chamfering this edge. But the way I did it was essentially by running it around the edge. Okay. Files only work one direction. In case you're a newbie with files, they only cut when you're pushing. And you can see it cuts through here pretty easy. The more glue is in the MDF or flake board, the harder it is. So I'm going to come around. And you'll notice as you go, you may wind up losing your symmetry. Your circle may start not looking like a circle anymore, And that's because the flake board has hard parts and softer parts in it. And me working like I am right now, it's kind of difficult to get a real good bite on it. Up inside these cabinets when I'm done. This cabinet here has a whole bunch of sawdust inside the corner there. And I'm going to pause the video real quick while I finish up this little hole. Alrighty, we are back and recording. So this hole that I've just chamfered, it only took me a few extra minutes since I paused the video. You can see that it looks okay. It's not like a machine did it. That's not bad. Give you kind of a close-up view. So that's kind of it. Easy peasy, and I also cleaned up the inside edges here. Flake board has a tendency, especially speakers from the factory, when you open them up, a lot of times when they drive the screws in, it'll make the flake board or MDF break apart. And then you wind up getting that stuff bouncing around inside the cabinet. So I do like to just take a file, knock off that loose stuff. And if any more of it comes along, you know, it is what it is, but right around the holes and stuff, you can just knock that loose stuff off there. And so I did that up in here. That way, once I get this thing all chambered up, it's not going to have loose pieces floating around in it. And then, so I only needed a little bit of extra space on this driver, which makes up for this part right in here. Which fits in there. Wonderful. Happy with that. Put this aside for right now. And next magic trick, the handy dandy, remember those Ginsu commercials? It slices, it dices, it cuts through pop cans, etc. That's kind of this guy. When you hear it work, you're going to be like, wow, that thing sounds aggressive. And it is. So you got to be kind of surgical with it. Yeah. Hoping this is kind of in a good line of sight for you. So basically, something you may have learned in shop class, if you took shop class like I did, is if you want to notch something, best way to do it is by cutting straight lines through it. You want to go as deep as the notch is, and then just start breaking out those little teeth. So it's going to wind up looking like a comb. And with this one here, by the way, because I, just did that and it took away the black appearance, I'm going to go ahead and put my black mark where it belongs here for my notch, so I can see what I'm doing. Because once the sawdust starts flying, we won't be able to see what we're doing. Alrighty. So, to get going, I'm going to just try lightly pushing and pulling so I start getting a cut. This black stuff on top of here is actually like a thick, not a contact paper, but almost like a glued on piece of plastic. It's kind of textured, and it does kind of flake and break easy, so it comes detached. So I have to be careful of that. Most of my cutting and filing is going to be going inwards, so I'm cutting it off that way. I'm not pulling it this way, which would make it peel back. All right, so let's try to get a a good angle on this so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to start right on the edge. Where this line is. When you hear that flake board catching, those are all the different densities, like all the different chips of wood in there and the glue. So that's what you're hearing. So yeah, cuts through it like butter. When you hear it squeaking like that, that's the heat from the blade as well as the glue in the MDF. This stuff starts breaking up pretty easy once you get a few of these little teeth in there. So don't be tempted to just knock them out right away. Take your time. All right, next trick. Now that we've got our little teeth in here, so we've got the edge here, got another one, got another one, got another one, another one, and this is my line right here, and I don't want to pass up that circle there. So next thing is going to be try to cut these out of there. Look for a vulnerable position. Start hacking. And this is what you wind up with. This is what I'm talking about, that black stuff coming off. So those I want to be kind of extra careful of. I was pulling this up like this so I could show you, but I actually want to set it on the ground, get a little bit better control. Alright, so we're going to take a look at how I did. So this is what the notch looks like, just kind of raw fashion, knocking it out. And next trick, going to be cleaning that up, make it look semi-professional by filing it. This is your chance to even it up if you didn't hit it perfect. It's not great, not perfect, but we're within our little ring. And we've got space now for those terminals. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do this next one off camera and start bracing these up like I mentioned. I hope that you and your loved ones have a very Merry Christmas. And I will catch you on part 7, where we'll be a little bit further along with this. So that's it. God bless and Merry Christmas.